I'm Kay Burgess, and today I'm going to talk to you about something I really love. The Owl House. And specifically a character in the Owl House I really, we don't have all day, so I'm just going to stop there. Love. Hunter. He is a member of a cult in the beginning. A very inspiring story, and someone who in some ways I think we can all relate to. The Owl House is about a girl called Luz, who gets herself stuck in a demonic realm ruled by an evil emperor called Belos. Belos was alive during the witch trials and entered a world full of demons and witches and came to the conclusion that he wanted to kill them all. His older brother Caleb disagreed with him, so he murdered Caleb. But in guilt or something, the guy is crazy. He started to clone his brother, but every clone of his brother would end up turning on Belos because Belos is crazy. So Belos would kill them and clone his brother again for some reason. Hunter is the newest clone. He is neither aware that he is a clone, nor is he aware he is on the fast track to die. Part 1. Beginning. Hunter's psychology in the beginning can really be summarized with one simple sentence. Belos is always right. In the very first episode we meet him, he's interacting with Luz and Ida, who are specifically against Belos. He never calls them by their names. He calls them the Owl Lady and Human, and he calls them criminals. Because to him, there is no respect you should give to someone who is an enemy of the greatest man on earth. Another thing in this episode that is really a sign of how indoctrinated Hunter is into Belos' cult of personality is Ida is telling him that the creature he's been sent to hunt is a good guy, not generally someone you want to kill. And his response is, the Emperor ordered me to slay one. I'm just following orders. This really goes down to this idea the Emperor is always right. Now, the Emperor in his rightness means that if he orders something done, it has to be done. And to be valuable in the world, you have to be valuable to this perfect man. Hunter, later in the show, is speaking to another character with similar issues to himself. We'll get more into it later in the episode. And he says the line, "We're both trying to show what we can bring to the table, and we can't fail, because there's nothing worse than disappointing someone who thinks you're special." Belos is someone who thinks Hunter is special. Really, he's the only person in Hunter's life, because as he says in the newest episode, he was never really allowed to hang out with the other scouts. We see oftentimes in the show that the Coven heads consider him a joke, and he knows nobody his age. Really, the only person in his life that gives him any value is Belos. Belos thinks he's special, so we can't fail Belos. We see this thinking over and over again, to the point where when he feels he's failed too many missions, he considers suicide. It's played for a joke, which makes me deeply uncomfortable, but it's like he says he's digging his own grave. I'm not sure if he's being literal. My dad always says it's a call for help, which actually makes perfect sense, though I'm not exactly sure who he's calling to. But yeah, too many failures, and he feels like there's really no purpose in life. Finally, I want to discuss how Hunter views the Coven in relation to the world. In the episode, Any Sport in a Storm, he makes a few new friends who are not in the cult, then tries to induct them in the cult against their will, and simply cannot understand why they aren't thanking him for it. He's inducting them into the best cult in the universe. Well, not cult. He's not aware he's in a cult. But he's inducting them into the best group in the universe. He is giving them something amazing, and they're not interested. There is something wrong with them, in other words. he comes to the conclusion that they'll just figure out how cool it is eventually. We'll discuss that further in the next part. Part 2, Outside World. Just so you know, I'll be splitting this one part into 4 parts because that's the kind of nerd I am. So buckle up. Part 1 of Outside World. Luz and Hunter. For all their differences, Luz and Hunter share one essential thing. They are both isolated, especially from people their own age. Luz is neurodivergent and has trouble with social cues. And let's just say Hunter's upbringing wasn't exactly cohesive to making friends. Both of them have this loneliness grow into shame. In the episode Hunting-Palisman, Hunter has been sent to get Belos some palisman so he can consume their souls, because turns out living as long as he has takes some work. Hunter believes the palisman will help cure a magical curse set on Belos. I guess he's half right, except Belos cursed himself. Luz is just sort of hanging out with the palisman for complex reasons we won't get into in this video, and doesn't love the idea of Belos getting them. During their fight, Luz takes Hunter's staff and finds out that Hunter has no magic on his own. Automatically, Hunter becomes manipulative, saying that Luz is too nice to hurt him, and trying to find an advantage past magic because of his probably fear. We'll see over and over again that when he's nervous, he just becomes a manipulative asshole. Well, early on, he gets better. Despite their opposition early on, a witch named Kikimora causes them to form a truce. She wants to give the palisman to Belos, which Luz doesn't want, and she wants to prove she's a better servant than Hunter, which Hunter doesn't want. Hunter and Luz begin with a grudging union that only gains traction when Luz starts creating a spell. Hunter, who, let's be honest, is a total nerd, becomes fascinated and talks about a book they both read. Then he stops himself because Belos says wild magic is bad. From that point on, the two of them have a comradeship. Hunter's interests are a form of control and escape for him, especially wild magic which fights against Belos' orders. It also represents a trait I will dive into further throughout this episode: empathy. Hunter believes wild magic will help heal Belos' curse, and rebels against him for that reason. As the episode continues, Hunter and Luz try to save/take the palisman, mattering on your perspective. Up until the end of the episode, we only know Hunter as the Golden Guard. He gives Luz his name. It is quite obvious over and over in the show that his mask is a protection from fear. The Golden Guard is backed by Belos. Hunter is just some teenager with no magic. Though very early on, Hunter loses his mask. They were very intentionally wearing masks to protect against the spell Luz cast. Hunter removes the mask from his face when sharing his name. Then he lets Luz escape with the palisman. This is the first time he chooses empathy over what the cult has instilled is the right thing in him, especially when it comes to directly disobeying Belos. It will not be the last. Part 2 of The Outside World. Hunter and Amity. By the time Hunter meets Amity in the episode Eclipse Lake, he has failed. He didn't get the palisman that Belos wanted, and literally everything in this section of a section is caused by that singular fact. Hunter's great divide between that of empathy and the twisted morality his cult instilled in him is shown in the worst way possible. Amity and Hunter share a similarity, but unlike Hunter's similarity with Luz, it doesn't aid them in any way. Amity and Hunter both believe in conditional love. They worsen each other's problems. Amity, through her anxiety, reminds Hunter why he can't fail Belos again, and Hunter convinces Amity that Luz will break up with her if Amity fails their mission. On the other hand, he feels no connection to Ida and King, even telling Amity the owl lady and her pet have nothing at stake, unlike us. In the end, he betrays Amity at the first chance he gets, I think he genuinely believes she'll understand. He thinks they both know what it really means to fail. He doesn't end up finding what Bellows wanted and considers suicide. In the moment I mentioned in part 1. Amity tries to show empathy to him, but seeing she has the thing he wants, he tries to steal it from her, resorting again to manipulation. To Hunter, how you protect yourself is you lie and steal. Though Hunter has very few classic social skills, he has plenty of examples of lying and manipulation, and uses the skill perfectly. This episode really highlights how delicate any forward motion can be for Hunter. Part 3 of Outside World, Emerald Entrails. Quick thing, I don't usually love sports, but I would die supporting the Emerald Entrails. Maybe because they don't actually exist. Hunter to Amity and Hunter and Luz shared a weird kind of empathy, but they weren't friends. In any sport in a storm, Hunter really first connects with people his own age in that way. We see early on in the episode he doesn't understand other teenagers, saying things like, "Sure, I've never actually spoken to witches my age. Teens are probably into the same things as me, like authority and rules. Listen, bud, I've met teenagers. None of them like those things." He meets Willow, who is trying to find people for her Grudgeby team. When seeing that the pamphlet says best and brightest, he decides to join. He takes on an alias I love, Caleb Jasper Blood Williams. He has fun, and again we see how much he yearns for connection. Then he reveals himself as the Golden Guard and tries to kidnap them because he isn't that far in his arc yet. Later in the episode, in a series of events we'll actually discuss in part 4 of Outside World, he gets a pentagram. It's just Instagram for witches. It has always struck me that Willow and Gus talk about what a slow typer he is. Witches are obviously living in a digital age. A teenage boy should be able to type. But why would Bellows let him do that? That would be a connection to the world. Cults hate nothing more than connections to the world. This pentagram brings him closer to those he met in the Grudgeby team, and is a permanent connection to his first friends. Part 4 of Outside World, Hunter and Flapjack. Yes, I'm aware that everybody who has watched the show has been waiting for me to bring up Flapjack. I was just saving best for last. Don't worry. Flapjack is Hunter's first example of unconditional love, and leads him to the unconditional love of others. He is also Hunter's Palisman. Hunter meets Flapjack in the episode Hunting-Palisman. As much as Hunter wants connection, Flapjack is wild magic. Have you ever noticed that Bellows calls anything he wants Hunter not to like wild magic? Just like saying. We see through the next couple episodes that Hunter feels a need to be mean to Flapjack, because being nice to wild magic will be wrong. On the other hand, he doesn't bring Flapjack to Bellows, even though Bellows needs to consume a Palisman's soul. Again, choosing empathy over cult programming. Their relationship only changes at the end of Eclipse Lake, when Hunter says the lines that end up opening a world of his psychology. "You stuck with me the whole time. Ha, bird." Then he completes the bond with Flapjack, being able to understand him. Hunter is desperate for conditional love, even if he doesn't know what that would look like. That's why all these people who are supposed to be his enemies he's making buddies with. I'm just saying. Now, speaking of unconditional love, you know how I said I'd go further into all the crazy stuff that happened in any sport in a storm? Now I am. Hunter tries to induct his new friends into a cult without their permission and ends up saving them, only when he realizes Bellows is going to kill their Palisman. He might not be able to understand their aversion to being part of the best coven in the world, but he can understand their aversion to their Palisman being killed. He doesn't want anything to hurt Flapjack. Hunter has this little tuft of hair on his head, and whenever Flapjack wants him to do something, he pulls on it. The only reason Hunter met Amity was because Flapjack forced him to. Sure, that didn't go well, but Flapjack didn't know that would go so badly. And when he was trying to be secretive with Gus, Flapjack forced him to connect, which is arguably only the reason why he processed a whole bunch of stuff that we'll go into later. Flapjack's job is to make Hunter open up to the world in a way Hunter would never be able to do on his own. Even more subtle things that Flapjack does lead to Hunter's connection with others, such as being so adorable that Hunter sends his friends pentagram photos of Flapjack. Part 3. Loss. Hunter, for as horrible as his life has been under Bellows, has something to hold on to, has a belief in how the world works and what his place in that world is. Losing the cult's ideology rips that away from him. We see how devastating that can be in the episode Hollow Mind, in which Hunter and Luz end up in Bellows' mind. Something I want to point out is that every time he sees Luz, he takes off his mask. Even if they aren't friends, he wants her to see the real him. I just wanted to mention that. Luz and Hunter begin in a level of Bellows' mind which is just lies without realizing it. We see Hunter pointing at the pictures on the walls in excitement, showing how Bellows helped people. To understand Hunter's motivation, one must understand his empathy. While often the cult wants against his empathy, he believes in the end he is helping people. Also, Bellows is his hero. That can't be undersold, right? People look up to their heroes and want them to be perfect. Oftentimes believe they're perfect. Then they find Bellows' true mind. Hunter finds out that Bellows is a bad person with a genocide plot, that he himself is a clone, and that the guy he was a clone of was a witch hunter. Yep. When he gets to the real world, he has a panic attack. Then he rips off the cloak, which represents the servitude he gives to Bellows, and runs off to Hexside, the first place he ever made connections outside the cult. What I find quite interesting is that they didn't really have Hunter question his cult upbringing up until the point when it's shoved in his face how wrong it is. Sure, he rebels, but he thinks that's simply proof he's a bad person, not that he's right. In the episode Labyrinth Runners, shortly after Hunter finds out Bellows is crazy, we can see that he is still in denial about having run away from the Emperor's Coven, saying, "Truth is, my living situation has been compromised. Maybe. So I just need to crash, temporarily." Hexside was the only place I could think of. He exaggerates this idea that he's going back, even though he's really not. We see elements of manipulative Hunter throughout this episode, like distrust and refusal to open up. But he doesn't actually lie to Gus, who, Flapjack made him talk to, or hurt him. In fact, he saves Gus from a horrible thing happening, which you'll have to watch the show to find out. Despite his denial, the idea of going back to Bellows horrifies him, making him freeze with fear. As much as he's not ready to admit it, he's realized Bellows isn't his home anymore. But that leaves him with questioning where his home is. He tells Gus when he finally and a half opens up. It's hard when you can't trust yourself. I spent my whole life believing I was doing something good for someone good, but it was a lie. And some part of me wants to believe in that lie. Now that everything he believes is wrong, what's left? Part 4. Recovery and Echoes. When the main 5 characters evacuate the demon realm because an evil godchild has taken it over, Hunter unintentionally takes a huge step to recovery. He separates himself from the situations and people that facilitated his abuse. I mean, you can't get farther than another dimension. In the new episode, thanks to them, Hunter seems happier. He takes on new hobbies and gets excited by the prospect of wolves. Still, his insecurities echo. There is still a nagging question of who he is. And even more concerning, he knows that he's a clone of a witch hunter. He and Luz agree to keep it secret, but it still tears away at him, making him read books on the subject. Still, one can see his confidence growing in the lines. Even if I'm not who I'm supposed to be, I like who I am right now. Things only really change when Bellows shows up. Bellows is trying to possess Hunter because, as I've said many times, Bellows is crazy. Hunter keeps seeing flashes of him, and as the episode goes on, becomes paranoid and angry, putting a lot of his anger on Flapjack, even though Flapjack didn't really do anything wrong. Hunter has finally gotten away from Bellows. He's finally forming his own identity, but Bellows is back to hurt him again. Later, when trying to find Bellows, Luz suggests wearing a mask to boost his confidence. In the process, he quotes himself from the first episode we saw him, using the same words verbatim that he used when confronting Luz and Ida to confront Bellows. Masks are a safety blanket for him, and even as far as he's come, Bellows still makes him feel as if he needs them. Finally, it ends in a confrontation in which Hunter finally voices everything to Bellows, while fighting off Bellows' possession. You know what I'd like, Bellows? I'd like to leave the Emperor's Coven, and never step foot in that throne room again. I'd like to study wild magic and learn how to carve Palisman. I'd like to attend Hexside as a regular student, and play flyer derby with my friends. But most of all, I'd like to make sure you never hurt anyone again. Shortly after that, Hunter almost dies, and Flapjack has to give up his life to save Hunter. Instead of grieving, Hunter stands with a strong expression. Hunter transitions from a boy who finds being happy an accomplishment, to someone who is ready to fight and save the world. Thank you to my Palisman shown on the screen, Truman. Thank you to Rosie, my dog. Thank you to my awesome, amazing, super cool parents. Thank you to my mentor, and thank you to my best friend. Bye!